Chad, Angel Hernandez, sayonara.
On hell.
Says he wants to spend more time with family. And here's the code for that as we sit here on May the 28th in the middle of the baseball season. He took a buyout, and he has already umpired his final game in Major League Baseball. He had been an umpire since 1991 in MLB. And for a guy who was scrutinized and yelled at and cussed out and known, I mean, it's rare in the NBA or in Major League Baseball that you know these guys by name now. Growing up, I knew some of these umpires by name.
He's infamous.
He's the guy. And he outlasted bad call after bad call. And he's now headed into retirement, taking the buyout from MLB at the age of 61. A lot of players sigh of relief with the inconsistencies of the strike zone of Hernandez.
It's really amazing that he's been around this long.
I know.
I'm also reminded of the joke from Bill Belichick at the roast of Tom Brady, where he turns to Rob Gronkowski and says, "My famous saying is to do your job, but I'm here to tell you after watching you on TV, stop doing your job." I think all of Major League Baseball joins in and saying, yeah, spend more time with your family. I think that's a good move for you at this point in your life. That's what you should be doing right now.
How did this guy keep
on hell?
How did he do this for so long?
I don't know.
That's what I've just seen how long he was in the circuit with the crew. And our guy, Mike Gunzelman at OutKick, pointed out that he once missed 23 calls in a game, in one game.
Just like
he had the strike zone incident with the Rangers earlier this year.
Yeah, just ball strike or like outs in the field, because those are different.
23 missed calls though.
I think it was him, and I could be wrong here, but no, it was I think it was Eric Gregg was the official or the umpire. But there was a Braves Marlins game that I swear to you, there was like 1993 when the Marlins won, or not 93. 97 when they went on to win the World Series. Livan Hernandez, the pitcher.
Yeah, okay.
And this is one of the most controversial games of all time because Livan Hernandez got every call of a strike outside
right there
the plate. And Tom Glavine, I think, who always chews on the outside, did not get a single call. And if you did that, I bet you go back and there's like 58 missed calls in that game. If you're just counting ball strike, that was just off the edge.
How do you miss 23 calls in the field, though? That would have to be ball strike.
Yeah, it's got to be a ball strike thing.
Unless it's under 8 softball or whatever you're
doing.
All
these technological advancements in sport really don't help bad officials.
No.
More than anyone else. That's the one where we never would have known. Some fan sitting up in the 300 section would have bitched to his relatives about that night that Angel Hernandez had 23 missed calls. But it's only him that saw it, right? He's like, I swear to you, had 23. And now we have this precision of a computer that shows exactly what a ball and a strike is, and we can go back and say, man, Angel, as I call him now, Angel Hernandez really screwed that game over.
Chad, rest in peace, Bill Walton.
Oh, man.
Who died yesterday at the age of 71 after battling cancer.
Younger than I thought.
I agree. Known for, I'll think of him for his energy, his enthusiasm, his unpredictable mindset of calling a basketball game. Eating a candle out of a cupcake. I also raise my hand and say there's sometimes it just annoyed the piss out of me.
Mm-hmm.
But I will miss that with Dave Pash, who I've gotten to know over the years, and the camaraderie. Dave would be calling random games without Bill Walton, and Walton would text him. Did you see his text? Would randomly text him, asking, pretending like he didn't know that Pash was calling the game, and saying like, "Hey, there's a great game on. Still 2.5 minutes left. You got time to flip over and watch it." The guy on the play-by-play is okay, but the game's really good.
That's really good.
Things like that. The outpouring of sympathy and memories and stories have been really, really cool to read.
He's one of those guys that as I aged, I appreciated him more. When I was younger, I hated him on television, quite frankly. And then as I got to appreciate what he was doing more and more, I grew to love the guy by the end of his broadcast career. And he had a big time. Remember Steve Snapper Jones and Bob Costas and him were on NBC?
Yes.
NBA on NBC back in the day. Pretty sure he was calling NBA Finals.
If you're making a top 50 broadcasters of all time, he's on it.
And one of the greatest NBA players of all time, one of the greatest basketball players ever. When you think about his career,
game that he had
under John Wooden at UCLA, and then in the NBA, He's an all-timer.
Let's see if I can grab this.
All-timer in both playing or broadcasting.
Here's a couple of them from Dave Pash, just sharing screenshots. I hope you're watching this Knicks Cavs game. Superb. Check it out. Still time. Hopefully the announcer will reset the scene for you. Or UCLA and Washington on ESPN. I have no idea who's calling the game, but the guy is stealing your lines.
R.I.P. to a legend.
And final thought on this. Reese Davis said that he was going back to Reese Davis's hometown. Walton was. And just called up Reese Davis and said, hey, what should I think of? Like, are there stops on the way I should check out? And then he called Reese back and asked for his home address where he grew up. And Bill Walton went to that home and took dirt from Reese Davis's home, sent a selfie, and said he was going to take the dirt where Reese Davis grew up and put it in his own yard as part of a mix of friendship. That's so random, but also very,
the ultimate tree hugger.
He was a little bit outside of where he was going. Took the time to go to the home to do that.
Yeah. He's a tree hugger. This is a man who
I know.
Protested throughout the 60s.
I know,
and
but
grew out a beard, and I think played with the Portland Trailblazers, and may have lived in a yurt. I think when he was playing for the Trailblazers.
Do you ever plan on, you want me to come to your yard and get some dirt and just put it in a pot?
Please. I'm actually thinking now about going and unearthing some ground from my home estate, just so we can blend it and mix friendships.
It's the On3 Elite Series. It's taking place here today with the top college football players in America that will be your next stars across college football. That will be in your NCAA college football video game. And will be in the NFL. What's Shannon say? 80% of those here, of the top 50, make it to the league, which is
by precedent of where they are in the recruiting rankings.
Yes.
80% will be there.
Chad,
that college football EA Sports trailer was quite good.
I'm
not even a gamer, and I watched that, and I was getting chills when they were showing it.
So I see it I played it all the time in college.
Same for me.
I think about the dorm room or the apartment, and friends of mine throwing remotes into a ceiling fan because so pissed off about it. But then also just taking your team on the dynasty, it's going to be a blast. And they did a side by side of the last game release was 2014, and the technology of the graphics that are taking place now in the new release.
So different.
Insane, man.
So different.
It's nuts. It makes me think 20 years from now, what will this look like?
What's also cool in the trailer,
in virtual reality.
They're showing, the actual players. You see the names on the back of the jerseys.
Yes, that's a good
Quinn
point too.
Ewers.
Yes.
And Jalen Milroe, and you see the actual guys out there. It's really neat.
Chad, and just reading through while we were down in Florida, SEC is there right now. Down in Destin. And Trey Wallace, by the way, great coverage right now at OutKick.com. He'll join us later in the week with the very latest. Andy Staples will join us from here at our broadcast site with On3, their college football senior reporter. He'll be with us coming up today. So Greg Sankey's asked about collectively bargaining with athletes. He says that's going to require employment. He says he's not had a student athlete come up to him and say, hey, I want to be taxed like an employee. That's true, but literally anywhere else they go in life, they're going to be taxed like an employee. So I don't know why the hesitancy to just admit that that's what this is going to be in the long grand scheme of things. Now, I wouldn't want to be taxed. I'm not saying that, Chad. But just because, whenever I was a sophomore in college, I wasn't thinking about being taxed like an employee. I was thinking about playing NCAA college football when I got out of class. So I would expect someone to come up and say, I would love to be taxed. Greg Sankey has never stepped up and said, I would love to be taxed moving forward like I'm taxed right now. But he is. And the difference with, the tongue-in-cheek there is I trust him. He's the silent assassin behind the scenes. But I trust that in the big business of college football, if there's going to be a leader or if there's going to be someone across this landscape to step up and actually hold court, to actually get the opinion and to get those that need to follow, to get federal legislation done, which is going to take a lot longer than what people think because it's an election year and you restart the whole cycle all over again. He's the guy to get up in front of everyone and say, this is what we need to do. This is how we go about things. And it's okay for him to say, you know what, we need to be patient. He's got coaches that are clamoring about how is this going to affect the roster cap? Like, are we going to be stuck at 85 only? Because that means we're not going to have walk-ons. We don't need to have just 85. And he's like, guys, stop talking about this right now. That doesn't matter. We've got to figure out how to pay the players and pay the athletes on campus across the board, distributing the funds necessary, Chad, to figure out how this is all legal. Because right now, if you have a salary cap and there's no collective bargaining agreement, isn't that in violation of someone's ability to earn more than what they could by said school? This is where I feel like we just hit the reset button on that, and nothing's going to come from it unless we have federal legislation granting this waiver when it comes to actually getting players to sign a CBA. That's got to happen, doesn't it? And it before we get down the path from coaches that are texting and then calling and texting Sankey saying, hey, we can't cap the rosters at only 85. We're far from that right now. And I think there's the cart before the horse, well before the horse in this case. And that's what's slowing us down.
So no student athlete has ever said, I want to get taxed. We obviously understand that.
I don't know if anyone who says that.
Every student athlete has said, we want a share of the pie. We want our piece. We want a share in revenue. So Greg Sankey and the SEC, the other power conferences, powers that be in major college sports all got together and decided, you're right. Well, there's no stopping this train now. It's off the tracks. It's running right for us. You get 22% of the revenue, and we will share it amongst our student athletes. So they got that part of it. Another thing that every student athlete has always clamored for is a say, is a seat at the table when things are being discussed in college sports. So, yeah, Greg Sankey's right when he says, I haven't had one student athlete come to me and say, I'm dying to get taxed. Now, what tax bracket am I in? I'd love to pay for these roads that we're driving on. Please sign me up for taxes. Right. Of course they haven't said that. But literally all of them have been talking about wanting to have a say over their future in the sport and wanting to have revenue shared with student athletes. They're going to get the revenue sharing piece of that. On your question, Hutton, about do we trust Greg Sankey? We were all sitting around watching Tennessee beat LSU in the SEC championship game over the weekend. Greg Sankey did a long 2-3 inning interview during that game. And I'm watching everything he has to say. And shout out Coach Mack, who I was watching this with. Coach Mack turns to me and says, this guy knows his stuff.
Yes.
And I'm watching it thinking, yeah, this guy knows exactly what to say and how to say it. He's very smart. He's very calculated. I trust Greg Sankey in being the smart, calculated guy he is to do what is right by the SEC and to do what is right for the SEC and to say what is right for the SEC or not say anything at all when it's right for the SEC. Do I trust Greg Sankey to lead all of college sports in the direction it needs to go? I don't know I can say that. I just know that he and Tony Petitti are going to do what's right by their conferences. And those are the powers in college sports. So then the question becomes, is doing what is right for the SEC and the Big Ten going to be what's best for all of college sports? I don't know that we have the answer to that.
Not all college sports.
I don't know we have the answer
just
to that.
Just football. I'm just focused on but the SEC, like, he had the comment about no one's advocating on behalf of the play. The players aren't coming up wanting to be taxed. There are those that are advocating for that path. And he says, it takes me back to a fundamental statement. There's been no better time to be a student athlete than right now in the history of college sports. No better time.
And that's true.
It's also true there's been no better time for the Southeastern Conference in college football than right now. And they want to keep the revenue. They're doing their say, but they're taxed, and it's okay. Like, so I don't know why that was I don't know if that's the number one item on the list, but without the federal legislation necessary, and he's admitted this, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to. They would like to have some structure in place sometime soon. He said by the election, but he also admits that's unlikely to be the case, and here we go again. So without their leadership, there really is no guardrail for where we are. But with the current setup, all we're going to see is more court documents circulating, more filings. And that's what sucks about this is I trust Sankey to put out a bullet point by point kind of status update. here's your checklist. You're going to start at the top and go down. And I trust him to actually put that together more so than I do the other leaders of college athletics. And if he really does mean that he wants the best for the college athlete, I nearly said student athlete, the college athlete, then I think they have to have the voice in that. And Sankey's been on Capitol Hill 5 times. There have been athletes that have been on Capitol Hill, but has there been a Power 5 college football player, like big-time name, big-time revenue driver on Capitol Hill? Maybe I've overlooked this. I know there's been 12,000 of these hearings, but the real money makers, I don't think their voice is being heard as well as the soccer player at Norfolk State. You see what I'm saying? That's who they're bringing to Capitol Hill. They matter, but because of the SEC, because of the Big Ten, they're going to get more in revenue share if you're a Power 4 conference than not, even though Sankey's looking out for the best of the Southeastern Conference first. I get that, but if not him, I don't know who takes us to the promised land of this, where we finally have what will be a setup. We just don't know when.
Well,
the inevitable is it's happening. The inevitable is, Chad, who knows when that happens.
Also, going back to what Greg Sankey said, I'm pretty sure the athletes are going to get taxed as a W-2 non-employee when they start taking shares of the revenue. I don't think that's a tax-deductible, tax-free payment that's going to go back to them. So and they will be taxed whether they like it or not. I don't know what the difference is, honestly.
Chad,
I'm not an accountant.
80% of the top 50 are here that will be in the league on average. You mentioned Coach Mack. Dave McGinnis, he and Jeff Fisher would have $1 million cash on the table in the team meeting room for the rookies. And they would take the cash, like dump it out. And then they would say, okay, here's your $1 million contract. Here is taxes. Split it off, put it into a bag. Here's what your agent's going to take, 3%. Got that. Here's, you helping fund that house or whatever for your family, which you're going to do, but just we're taking that out because it's already planned. Here's your rent and everything. Here's what your friends are going to be asking for on average. And then here's what you're left with. That reality's coming for these guys sooner rather than later. And you're right. The W-2s and everything factor in, but they don't want it on the university campus because they would rather structure something to where they don't have the CBA in place.
Yeah, look, I think the two big hurdles now, and there's going to be a lot of them to come in the court system, but with athletes now getting a share of the revenue, it's going to be, are you going to evenly distribute it? They won't.
Right.
They're going to give a bulk of it to the sports that bring in the most revenue. Football, men's basketball, most places, baseball at some, women's basketball to an extent also, depending on the school. And then where does the next legal challenge come? Is it going to come from Title IX? If you give the money more to men's sports, there's no, and Charlie Baker's talked about this, Title IX is about opportunity, not compensation. So there's no language about equal compensation. It's about equal opportunity at U.S. colleges and universities for athletes, for female and male athletes. So are they going to want to fight that fight, or are they going to want to fight football and men's basketball when there's a lawsuit on their behalf if they do try to distribute it evenly, saying we're the ones bringing in the most money? So those things are going to be decided. I think this was a step in the right direction. It was a step to get all of these lawsuits off of their back and to move forward without fear of being sued again. But is it resolution? No. But I do think it's one step closer to what may eventually become resolution.
$2.7 billion is a lot.
Yeah.
It's also
over 10 years.
Over 10 years. And it's also 2.5 NCAA tournaments.
Yeah.
Is what that comes out to.
It's also all not being paid by the NCAA. It's the NCAA, then it's going to – I thought the craziest part about this was the 27, I think it is, other conferences that aren't Power 5 are paying more than the Power 5 in all of this. And it was the Power 5 who decided – all of this to settle with the NCAA. It was the NCAA and Power 5 said, all right, here's how we're going to do it. And all these, the Patriot League is going to have to pay this much money now. And the commissioner for the Patriot League is stepping up saying, what the hell is going on?
Why are we doing this?
We can't do this.
Who voted?
Yeah, we understand. We want college sports to exist. We want the NCAA tournament to exist as is right now. But I don't know that we can afford this, paying on behalf of everyone else. So that's another part of it that's going to have to be settled.
So Washington State and Oregon State, they're now paying more than what they would have been paying, right? Because they went to the WAC or the Mountain West.
Yeah, that's right.
So they're now paying
Now,
more.
I think that because they voted as the former Pac-12,
Okay.
not their next conference, I think they're grandfathered into the same deal as the Pac-12.
Wow.
Because their voting block was the old Pac-12, not what they're moving into. So, yeah, it actually is going to benefit them now to not pay that Mountain West charge or the West Coast Conference.